So we're often asked, what is plastic and why are there so many different types of plastics? So plastics are all made of polymers, and that's regardless if they are bio-based, so made from a renewable source, or if they're oil-based, so made of a non-renewable source. And regardless if they're bio-based or made from an oil source, all of them are actually plastics. So why do we have so many types of them? Well, different types of plastics, which are all moulded and shaped using pressure and temperature, are selected based on their different properties. So for example, some of them can be quite brittle, some can be quite hard, you can get very soft plastics, some are made so that you can put them in the oven, some are designed so you can put them in your freezer, and others so you can use them in a flexible way like a bag. So going into a little bit more detail on the types of plastics, broadly they're categorised into 7 areas. One of the areas is something called PET, and that's often used for drinks bottles and also things like salad trays. Another type of plastic is HDPE. Now this is often used in milk bottles because you can get this nice handle, it could be moulded into this shape. It's also used for cleaning products, and that's because the type of plastic, it's very suitable against corrosive chemicals, so it makes sure it can't leak out of this type of product. So bleach, for example, is the perfect use for HDPE. So there's a variation of what we call polyethylene. So you get HDPE, high density PE, and also a low density PE, so LDPE. And that's used for bags, like anything sort of nice and stretchy, so this toilet roll wrap. It's also used for frozen food bags and also bubble wrap. And this is the type of plastics that most supermarkets will accept for recycling at their collection points. So polypropylene is used because you can put it in the microwave. You can't put it in the oven, you can put it in the microwave, but you can also put it in your freezer. So it's often used for things like margarine tubs, ice cream tubs, and it's also used in some food trays. Polypropylene also comes in a film format, so by that I mean these sorts of crinkly plastics here. Now, a sort of a typical way to know if it's polypropylene is it gives that sort of crunchy feeling. So it's often used for crisps. A lot of salad bags are also made out of polypropylene, but the fact that it's crunchy doesn't mean that it's always polypropylene, so it can be a bit confusing. So PVC is used increasingly less when it comes to packaging. One of the biggest uses is in pharmaceuticals, so it's quite soft plastic, and it's used so you can in these types of blister packs for medicines. But the biggest use really for PVC is in construction, our doors and our windows, for example. So polystyrene, there are broadly 2 different types of polystyrene. There's what we call an expanded polystyrene, so this sort of spongy stuff, and this one, which is the sort of stuff that is often used if you buy a new microwave or dishwasher, and it's also used in some cutlery. But another type of polystyrene is high impact polystyrene, or HIPS, and that's the type of material that you often use in multi-pack yogurts, and you use it in the industry because it snaps quite nicely. So I bet if I do this now, you can hear that snapping noise. So you'll hear that when you snap apart your yogurt pots. So the 7th category is other plastics, which includes compostable plastics. Now, sometimes you also hear these are being referred to as biodegradable. Now, biodegradable doesn't always mean that it's necessarily compostable, but a compostable plastic will always be biodegradable. An example of where these types of plastic are used are in the linings of some coffee cups. So they're used inside here to make sure that when you put the hot water in, all the card won't fall apart. So we're often asked, well, what are the good and bad types of plastics? But the answer to that is not really that simple, because the different type of plastic is really selected depending on the functionality that that packaging has to perform. If it has to go in the oven, in the freezer, if you need a handle on it, for example. So there are all these different types of considerations, but one of the key considerations is whether or not you can recycle it. So the types of plastics that you can recycle at home are the HDPE plastic, so used for milk bottles, bleach bottles, household cleaning products, sometimes used in your bathroom products. PET, that's the sort of plastic for drinks bottles, trays. Don't ever forget to recycle them from your bathroom as well. We're missing a lot of these from our recycling. And polypropylene, so your margarine tubs, your ice cream tubs. So there are types of plastics which are really difficult to recycle. So that includes PVC. Now the reason for that is the very small volumes of it that are placed on the market. It makes it very difficult to make it commercially viable to recycle, to collect all of it together. But it also is a contaminant to the other recycling. So it's difficult to separate, particularly from PET. And what happens when you go and try and recycle it is it makes that PET sort of a yellowish colour, which isn't terribly nice to look at. Polystyrene is difficult to recycle, one, because when it's this expanded polystyrene, when it's mixed together with other recyclables, it ends up going into the paper recycling, which is obviously not good when you're trying to recycle paper. Again, it's produced in very small quantities, so it's difficult to make it commercially viable to separate it. What we always have to remember is that recycling is all about manufacture and turning it into another product or packaging. So if there's no end market in place, if there's nothing else to turn it into, that makes it really difficult. And that is often really the case in polystyrene. Another area that we often get asked about is black plastic. Now, one of the reasons this is really difficult is because when plastic is separated in the recycling processes, it uses something called NIR, or near infrared, and the lights beam down onto a belt as this is moving along, and it can't see the material, so it can't eject it into the right stream to say into the PET stream, so it gets lost in the process. But there are developments in place, so there are companies that are starting to move towards what's called near infrared detectable black, which is really good news. But really, in simple terms, most brands and retailers are now just moving away from it. So plastic film is another area where there are lots of challenges with recycling. There are three different types of plastic films. There's what we'd call polyethylenes, which is things like frozen food bags, bread bags, carrier bags. It's used in toilet roll wrap, cereal packets, bubble wrap. We also have something called polypropylene films, which are used for crisp packets, biscuit wrappers, salad bags, those sorts of things. Often they're very, very crunchy. And then the third area is things like pet food pouches, dog food pouches. Now, most supermarkets will accept the polyethylene materials. So things like your bread bags, frozen food bags, loo roll wrap, carrier bags, all of those things you can take to your local supermarket to be recycled. If in doubt, the best thing to do is to check the label. So recycling is the absolutely the best thing that we can do at home in order to make sure that this material is captured, stays within what we would call the economy, make sure that this plastic bottle is turned back into a plastic bottle, or it might come back to you in another form. If you recycle a plastic bottle back into a plastic bottle, then actually it takes 75% less energy. So the resource use is just really, really important, incredibly important for climate change. When it comes to plastics, we need to use as little as possible, but as much as necessary. And so the plastics that we absolutely just need to get rid of, things like polystyrene, PVC, and other items like plastic cotton buds, plastic straws, stirrers, plastic that break down into microplastics. All of these are bad for the environment. So RAP, through the UK Plastics Pact, is working really hard on these issues. So the UK Plastics Pact is about working together with the brands, the retailers, the waste management companies, the recyclers, at bringing everyone together to make sure that we eliminate the plastic that we don't need, designing all plastic to be recyclable or reusable, and ultimately making sure that it stays within the circular system, so plastic packaging being made back into plastic packaging and other products, and out of the environment. So when it comes to plastic packaging, the very best thing that you can do with it is to make sure that it gets recycled. So check the label for information, and please do visit Clear on Plastics for further information.